There's a couple of videos out on YouTube that have a difference between a double action and a single action pistol, but none that I really thought broke it down for the majority of people who really don't know that much about firearms or are very new into the firearms community. So this video isn't intended for those of you who already have a good handle on firearm functionality. This is more for the bulk of 90% of people out there that may just be wanting some general information on it. And this is kind of my take on the differences between a double and a single action, and I'm sure that people can have a lot to add to it, but for me this is kind of the way I would break it down to tell somebody that really doesn't know the difference between the two. Ultimately what we're talking about, if you ever hear a difference between a double and a single action, and that is the relationship between the trigger and the hammer and how that whole mechanism works within a pistol. I have two auto-loading pistols in front of me. I have a single action and then a double action, which can also go into single action. And I just want to break down the differences really quick so that people have an idea of what one means and why are there two different actions, perhaps which one's better, what are the advantages or disadvantages to both, etc. So without further ado, the first pistol here I want to demonstrate with is a Springfield 1911A1, and this is a single action pistol. And the reason they call it a single action pistol is because the trigger here, all it does is release the hammer and the pressure built on the hammer from the spring to allow it to fire forward and then start the cycling operation for the firearm. In a single action pistol, what you'll notice is the trigger is set very close to the frame, and there's not a lot of pull distance or distance between where the trigger has to be pulled to release the hammer. And that is simply because when the trigger is pulled, all it does is release the hammer. I'll demonstrate here. You'll see the hammer come forward, and now with the hammer forward in its rest position, there is no way, if the firearm doesn't cycle or it's an empty chamber, as is the case here, in pulling the trigger back now will do nothing to fire the arm. If a single action pistol has the hammer in the down position, no matter how hard you pull that trigger, it doesn't matter. It's not going to fire. It's not going to cycle. The hammer has to be put back in two different manners. Either the user has to put it back by pulling the hammer back, or by racking the slide, or simply by the firing cycle and having the round discharge and create the energy necessary to put the hammer back into the cocked position. So in this particular case, for a single action pistol, if you're trying to get the hammer back, you can either pull the hammer back with your hand, or if the hammer is already down, you can rack it, and then you'll have the hammer also in the back position. Typically a single action pistol such as this, there's a safety that engages in the on position, and it's actually carried cocked and locked, as they say, with the safety on, so that if you need it, you can simply take the safety off and you're ready to go. Anyways, that's the single action pistol here. Once again, 1911A1, pretty common pistol. Now what I want to demonstrate with the double action pistol here is I have an HK full-size USP that, similar in style, the hammer can stay in the rearward position just like the single action, but it can also pull the hammer from the rest position into the cocked position and fire it. So what I want to demonstrate here is notice how the trigger is designed quite a bit differently, and there's a lot of room in here. Part of that is for your finger to come inside, but the other part is to give you that pull, because the internal mechanisms are different, and it allows the user, when they pull the trigger through the force in their hand, to preload that and then also to release it. So for instance, if I release it in this case, and it's in the down position, now look at how much farther that trigger is here, and that gap, that distance between the two. And now as the user pulls that, you'll see this hammer here come back as I pull that trigger until it releases. Now after it releases, if it was to fire and to cycle it, then the firearm here would now keep it back into a single action mode. And the reason they design a lot of firearms, or one of the reasons I believe they design firearms to that, is because it's a lot easier simply for a user to put a few pounds of force to release a hammer than it is to have to pull it back. Because as you're pulling it back, especially with new users, they'll take that and they'll struggle a little bit. So while they're trying to aim down for their sight picture, their hand may be wobbling a little bit or what have you, as they're having to create the force necessary to draw the hammer back. And there's nothing that stops the user from having, can put the hammer back themselves or what have you. But you'll notice here, I want to demonstrate it. that as I pull this hammer back, look at the relationship between where the trigger is and where the hammer is. And as I pull that hammer back, see how that trigger comes farther rearward? Because now after you take the slop out of the trigger, all it's doing is releasing it instead of falling forward and doing that. Now this has a double action typically has a much less likelihood of discharging accidentally because it takes so much more of that force, which is why most people that have a double action pistol will choose to carry it with the hammer, you know, in the down position here, because there's a lot less chance of something happening, you know, versus if it's cocked, then you have to worry a little bit more about your trigger release. And so the reason they have the differences mainly is because it's a lot easier, as I said earlier, I believe, to fire a single action pistol with it already back, because while you're concentrating on your sight picture and other elements of your target and engagement, you don't have to worry about pulling so hard back and having to adjust or miss the particular point of impact that you're looking to strike. It also tends to be safer, I think, and for the most part, it's pretty common that a lot of pistols today, as I say, go from a double action to a single action. So that's the major differences. The drawback to a single action is that if the hammer's down, no matter how hard you squeeze the trigger, you know, it's not going to fire. You've got to have it in the backwards position or in the cocked position. Double action doesn't have that disadvantage, so that's typically why you see a lot more double actions on the market today that can go from a double also into a single, where it'll stay back every following shot after that. And then I don't have a variant of it in front of me, but they make pistols that are double action only, that the hammer returns to its rest position every single time it's fired, and that way you have it's at least a consistent pull. Because with a double action, the first shot is really hard, then subsequent shots become much easier after that. After that cycles one time, then it will stay back, you know, until you release the hammer back down. So those are the main differences between a double action and a single action. I hope that this has, you know, shed some light for somebody who didn't know. I'm sure for a lot of other people, they're going to, you know, disagree on some of the finer points, but I just want to throw that out there as my version of the differences between double and a single action, so people can understand that. So hopefully we're able to take something of value away from it and pick up something new. Thank you for watching.